Hello, everybody. Welcome in physics class. Today we are going to proceed with our topic, which is known as thermal expansions. My name is Sir Ismail Yumambogo. Come Educare TZ for more information and more periods concerning about physics. Okay, today we are here in physics form 3 concerning about the thermal expansions of liquids. We have already passed through a various subtopic concerning about the concept of thermal expansions. We have already passed about the thermal expansion of solid, and today we are going to look on thermal expansions of liquids, and later on we are going to focus on thermal expansions of gases. So, in thermal expansions of liquid, it is easier to observe expansions in liquid rather than in solid. Why? This is because liquids expand much more than the solid for equal change of temperature. We can see kwamba ni rahisi kuweza kuobserve expansion ambayo inatokea kwenye kimiminika kuliko kuobserve expansions ambayo inatokea kwenye solid. Kwa nini tunasema ni rahisi kuobserve thermal expansions au expansions ambayo inatokea kwenye liquid kuliko kwenye solid? This is because, hii ni kwa sababu liquids expands much more than solid, kwamba liquid ina tabia ya kuexpand au kutanuka zaidi kuliko kwa solid for equal change of temperature. Pale ambapo takapokuwa temperature change ipo sawasawa, yani haibadiliki, it means that kwamba liquids ina expand much more than the solid. Tukiapply change in temperature ya 30 kwenye liquid substance, tukaapply temperature ya 30, change ya temperature ya 30 katika solid substance, it means that the liquid expand much more than the expansions which occur in solid substance. There is something question, there are others questions. Kuna maswali mengine ambayo yanazuka kwenye thermal expansions in a liquid. Mfano, unaambiwa explain why when heating a liquid its level initially decrease and then it is increased to become more large than the original level. Kwamba elezea kwa nini ambapo why when heating a liquid, tunaelezea kwa nini tutakapokuwa tuna heat a liquid au tutakapokuwa tunachemsha kimiminika it is level initial decrease, kwamba level zake kwa mara ya kwanza zinapungua and then it's increase, na baadaye inafanyaje? Inaongezeka to become more large than the original level, na ina becomes au inakuja kuwa ni yani inakuwa level yake inakuwa ni kubwa kuliko ile original. Why there is an expansions, yani kwamba kwa nini tutakapokuwa tuna heat kimiminika initial level, ile level yake ya mwanzo inapungua and then it's increased, da baadaye inapungua kwanza alafu baadaye inaongezeka to become more large than the original level. The reason behind is that the liquid level drops due to the expansion of its container, kwamba level ya kimiminika at original mara ya kwanza itapungua kutokana na expansion ya nini? Ya container. We are sure kwamba tunakuwa tuna container ambayo ile container yake tunaweka kimiminika, so the volume of the liquid is maintained according to the volume of the container. So tunaweza tukadefine volume ya liquid kutokana na ile volume ya container. So tutakapokuwa tumeapply heat kwenye ile container ambayo ndani yake kuna liquids, ni kwamba ile container ina tend to increase. Kwa hiyo ile volume ya container inafanyaje? Inaongezeka. So volume ya container ikiongezeka inaifanya ile volume of the liquid iweze kupungua. So anasema the liquid level drops due to the expansion of its container which initially absorbed all the heat, kwamba kwa sababu ile container mara kwanza inakuwa ina absorb heat yote, maana yake ile container itatend ku expand, itatanuka. So ile container ikitanuka, maana yake ile volume of liquid itafanyaje? Itashuka chini ile level yake, which initially absorbed all the heat. The level of the water will then keep rising at the container due to the expansion of the water, its density decrease. Baada ya ile container kupata joto, maana yake ile joto linatoka kwenye container linahamia kwenye ile liquid ambayo mfano wake. So the volume of water tend to increase, it tend to rise due to the expansion ambayo itatokea kwenye nini? Kwenye water. So ile expansion ya water ambayo itatokea itafanya ile volume ya water iweze kutanuka. Kwa maana hiyo sasa it is density decrease, kwamba density ya water kwa wakati huo itafanya kupungua. So another thing is something known as apparent volume expansions of liquid. There are something that is special is known as apparent volume expansions of liquids. What does it mean? Tunasema kwamba is the difference between the initial volume of the liquid and its final volume without consideration of expansion of the container. Tunapozungumzia apparent, why we mean that real something. So the real volume expansion of liquid, kwamba ile volume expansion ya liquid, anasema kwamba ni ile difference, ni ule utofauti between the initial volume, kwamba ule tofauti uliopo kati ya volume ya kwanza and final volume na volume ya mwisho without considerations, bila ya kuzingatia expansion ya container. Kwa labda let's say tuseme kwamba tulikuwa tuna liquids ambayo ina volume ya 20 cm cubic, tukawa tumeipulse katika container. Baada ya kuweka kwenye container tukaihit, ile volume ikaja ikasoma ni 21 cm cubic. Kwa hiyo bila kuconsider expansion ya container, tukitafuta ule utofauti wa volume uliopo kati ya volume initial and volume final is what we call apparent volume expansion of liquid or real volume expansions of liquids. That was called apparent volume of expansion. Apparent volume of expansion of liquids. I'm sorry. Once I say apparent volume of expansions of the liquid, kwamba ni ule tofauti between the initial volume of the liquids and the final volume without consideration of expansion of the container. Kwa bila kuzingatia ile expansion of the container. Lakini tunapozungumzia absolute, maana yake ni real. That apparently something is not real. Lakini tunapozungumzia absolute means real. So absolute expansions of liquids tunasema ni ile real expansion ya liquid. Anasema the difference between the final volume of the liquid and it is intermediate volume, kwamba ule utofauti uliopo kati ya final volume ya liquid, kwamba ile final volume ya kimiminika and it is intermediate volume, pamoja na ile intermediate volume yake is what we call the absolute or apparent or tunasema ni or real expansions of liquid. To make this statement, two statement clear, ni kwamba tunapozungumzia apparent volume, hii ni ile volume, ni ule tofauti wa volume unapo kati ya initial na final bila ya kuzingatia expansion ya container. Lakini tunapozungumzia absolute au real expansion of liquid, tunasema ni ule tofauti wa volume uliopo kati ya final na initial, uliopo kati ya final na intermediate volume. Kwa hiyo ule tofauti uliopo kati ya final and the intermediate volume, the difference between the final volume of the liquids and the intermediate volume is what we call real or absolute expansions of liquids. The intermediate volume of liquid, people can ask, what are the intermediate volume of liquid? Kwamba unapokuwa unazungumzia intermediate volume of liquids unakuwa na maana gani? Tunasema the intermediate volume of liquids attained due to the change that was caused by expansion of the container, kwamba hii ni ile volume ya kimiminika ambayo inaattain au inaifikia au inafikiwa kutokana na mabadiliko ambayo haya mabadiliko yanasababishwa na kutanuka kwa container. Tulikuwa tuna container yetu, baada ile container yetu kutanuka, maana yake ile volume ina tend to decrease. Ile volume ikitend to decrease, ile is what we call the intermediate volume of liquids. Baada ya pale ita expand. Ile expand pale mwisho wake tutasema hiyo ni final volume. So the difference that existing between the initial volume and final volume and the intermediate volume is what we call absolute or real expansions of liquid, So intermediate volume, hii ni ile volume ambapo kimiminika kitakapokuwa kimefikia ile thermal due to change that caused by the expansion of the container. Kwamba wakati tumeweka kimiminika chetu tukaweka kwenye container, baada ya kuweka kwenye container ile volume inakuwa attained due to the change of the expansion of container. Wakati ile container ime-expand, maana yake ile volume itachange. So that volume that is changed due to the change of thermal expansion of the container is what we call intermediate volume. The volume expansivity of liquid brackets coefficients of volume of expansions. There is something known as volume expensivity of liquids. Kwa kuna kitu kinaitwa volume expensivity of the liquids, au tunasema coefficient of volume of expansion. What does it mean? Tunasema is the fractional change, kwamba hii ni fractional change in volume, kwamba ni uchukue change in volume ugawie, anasema per unit temperature change. Kwa tunasema the fractional change in volume. Tukisema fractional change in volume, maana yake ni change in volume over original volume times change in temperature. This SI unit ni Kelvin inverse 1. Kwa hiyo SI unit yake ni reciprocal of Kelvin or reciprocal of degrees of Celsius. So you can see here the thermal mathematical is the fractional change. So tunapozungumzia ile thermal expensivity au tunapozungumzia volume expensivity is the fractional change in volume per unit temperature change. So SI unit ni Kelvin, reciprocal of Kelvin or reciprocal of degrees of Celsius. So volume expensivity is equal to increase in volume of liquid, kwamba ni kile kitendo cha kuongezeka kwa volume of liquid divides by original volume, ukigawanya kwa ile original volume ya ile liquid times rise in temperature. Yani tukiwa tunasema the volume of expensivity is denoted by beta symbol. This beta is equal to V2, which is what we call V final, minus V1, which is what we call V initial, divided by V1, which is what we call the volume initial, times the change in temperature. So in fact, whereby the original or initial volume of the liquid is what we call V1. Final volume, the final volume tunaita ni V2, and thus increase in volume of the liquid, thus kwamba kuongezeka kwa volume ya liquid maana yake ni sawasawa na mtu achukue V2 atoe ile V1. Initial temperature tunaita theta 1 and final temperature tunaita theta 2. So rise in temperature it means that the change in temperature. So the change in temperature is what is equal to the theta 2 minus the theta 1. So the volume of expensivity is denoted by the symbol beta. That is volume of expensivity, or volume of expansivity. So in linear expensivity between 0 to 100 degrees of Celsius kwenye volume, kwa kuna liquids, lakini baada ya kuwa na hizi liquids tunakuwa tuna hizi volume of expensivity. Mfano tukisema benzene, the volume of expensivity yake ni 124 times 10 -5. Tuna gasoline ni 95 times 10 5. Tuna glycerin ni 53 times 10 5. Tuna kerosene ni 99 times 10 5. Tuna mercury ambayo ni 18 times 10 5. Tuna methano ambayo ni 122 times 10 5. Tuna water katika temperature ambayo ni 20 degrees of centigrade, yenyewe volume expensivity yake ni 21 times 10 5. Tuna water at any temperature, maana yake ni 35 times 10 5. So in these expansions of liquid, there is something known as anomalized expansions of water. By the way, what is the anomalized expansions of water? So the anomalized expansions of water is the decrease in the density of water as cooled from 4 degrees of Celsius to 0 degrees of Celsius. Tunapozungumzia anomalized expansions ya water, maana yake ni kile kitendo cha kupungua. Ni kile kitendo cha kupungua kwa density ya maji kutokea kwenye 4 degrees of Celsius to 0 degrees of Celsius. Au tunasema is the unusual behavior of water, kwamba ni ile tabia ambayo sio ya kawaida ya maji, where it is volume, ambapo volume yake it tend to decrease, itapungua when the temperature rise, wakati ambapo temperature ita rise au itaongezeka. When the temperature rise kutokea kwenye 0 degrees of Celsius to 4 degrees of Celsius and not 40. Is from 0 degrees of Celsius to 4 degrees of Celsius, and its increase, na kwamba ile volume yake itaongezeka when the temperature, wakati ambapo temperature itashuka kutokea kwenye 4 degrees of Celsius to 0 degrees of Celsius. That is what we call anomalized expansion of water, and sometimes we say it's unusual behavior. It's not a normal behavior. So what happens below 4 degrees of Celsius to 0 degrees of Celsius? Kwamba kitu gani ambacho kinatokea kati ya hii 4 degrees of Celsius to 0 degrees of Celsius? We say that at 4 degrees of Celsius, just above the freezing point, kwamba hii ni ile temperature ambayo iko above the freezing point. We know that the freezing point is below 0. So the 4 degrees of Celsius, just above the freezing point, water reaches its maximum density, kwamba ni juu ya ile freezing point ambapo sasa yale maji yatakuwa yana reach its maximum density, yatakuwa yanafikia ule ukomo wa density yake. As the water cool, wakati ambapo yale maji yanapokuwa yanapoa further toward the freezing point, yanapokuwa yanapoa kuelekea ile freezing point ya maji, the liquid water expand to become less density, kwamba liquid water ina expand, baada ya kuexpand ina become less density, kwamba density yake inakuwa ni density ndogo. So what happens below this one? Kwamba kitu gani kinatokea chini ya 4 degrees of Celsius kwenda kwenye 0 degrees of Celsius? Kitu gani kinatokea below this one? Anasema kwamba at 4 degrees of Celsius, katika 4 degrees of Celsius, just above the freezing point, yani tunapozungumzia above the freezing point, water reach its maximum density, kwamba maji yanafikia its maximum density. So maji yakifikia its maximum density, as the water cool further toward its freezing point, wakati ambapo maji tutaendelea kuyapoza zaidi kuelekea freezing point yake, the liquid water expand to become less dense, kwamba liquid water, yale maji ya liquids, yana tend to expand to become a less denser, yana expand na kuwa na density kidogo. So you can see this is a graph of the density against temperature. So this is the density and this is the temperature. So you can see the liquids, kwamba kile kimiminika kikifika kwenye liquids kwenye zero, kuanzia kwenye zero hapa, it tend to expand. You can see this water from zero it tend to expand, inaanza ku expand. Itakapofika kwenye 4 yenyewe basi itaendelea kufanyaje? Ku expand au ita tend to decrease, yani itaenda kufanyaje? Itaenda ku decrease expansion yake. So other liquids yenyewe at 0, yani at kuanzia kwenye -5 unaona tu ina tend to decrease as this one. Lakini in water it has anomalous behavior, kwamba yenyewe kwenye 0 hapo, kuanzia kwenye 0 it tend to increase hapo mpaka kwenye 4. Fika kwenye 4 it tend to decrease. This is the graph of density against temperature. So the effects of anomalized expansion of water. What are the effects that are being observed on anomalized expansions of water? So the effect